Teal Talk Tuesday, a video series by Star.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Teal Talk Tuesday. My name is Angela Golden, and today joining us is Gabby, and I'll let Gabby introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabby. I am a resource advocate at STAR for our New Orleans branch, and I am also a forensic interviewer at the New Orleans Child Advocacy Center.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, and that's perfect transition to what we're discussing today. We are going to talk about a CAC, or a Children's Advocacy Center. Can you tell us what a CAC is, what it means for a child?
So a CAC is a place where kids go, and by kids, I mean as young as just a few months old up into 17. Sometimes we do have adults who come in who may have certain disabilities that would come in as well. But a CAC is a place where kids go when things may or may not have happened, specifically when it comes to sexual abuse, physical abuse, witness to homicides, neglect, anything of that nature. And kids will come in and either do a video recorded interview what happened with a trained forensic interviewer, or they will also sometimes do forensic exams as well.
Okay, so that's a lot of information. Let's first look at the forensic interviewer. So what is that? What does that position mean?
Yeah, so a forensic interviewer is a person who is trained to talk with kids. That is the simplest way we put it, especially when kids and parents come in, because it is a really big word.
Yeah.
And for kids, they're like, what on earth? So it's someone who is trained to talk with kids. There are several different protocols that a forensic interviewer can be trained in, but it's just a scientific, evidence-based training that is done to know how do you talk with kids and how do you word questions for them to make it non-directive, non-shaming, and non-blaming.
So in your special training, do you go through any specific techniques to get the information from the child, or how do you get a child to tell you what has happened?
So a lot of times kids are very aware of why they've come in there, but sometimes they aren't aware. So as forensic interviewers, we're always trying to remain non-directive, using open-ended questions and refraining from any direct questions that may look like we're leading a child into one direction. So oftentimes that transition is just, what did you come here to talk with me about today? And we just kind of go from there and see what a child says. And sometimes they're like, oh, I came to talk about food and playing outside. And certain techniques that are used are like, okay, well, like for example, if the perpetrator is someone in the home, we may say, so tell me, who do you live with? And they'll go into who they live with, and we say, what does this person do that you like? And they may say it and go, what does this person do that you don't like? And sometimes they're like, oh, well, sometimes this person hits me. And we're like, oh, well, tell me all about that. And so it's definitely tricky sometimes to get information out of kids when you're not trying to be directive with it.
When you just want them to give you the information willingly. Now, do you suggest that parents talk to their children before they come to a CAC, or how does that work?
So oftentimes parents will come in and say that they've told their child nothing, or that they've told their child, we're going to see a doctor. So as forensic interviewers, we kind of walk in and kids are thinking we're the doctor, or kids immediately say, well, we don't want any shots. I don't like shots. And we always have told parents kind of after the fact that, like, it's okay to tell especially if the child disclosed to them, it's okay to tell the child, remember that thing you told me the other day? Well, you're going to talk to someone about that, and just leaving it at that. We don't want the parents like questioning kids or giving them too much information, but just letting them know, like, hey, like, you told me this happened to you, so now you're going to go talk with someone about that.
Right. So a big part of what we do here is to help survivors and help, even family members of survivors dealing with the trauma, dealing with what has happened to them in the sexual assault, sexual harassment, whatever the case may be, we, you know, help them to work through that. At a CAC, is there a process to help the child work through what they've experienced, or even like once they leave the interview?
So at the New Orleans CAC, we do not have counseling on site. Now, what we do have are we have like someone from Metro who is there as a case manager. And we also have someone from Children's Bureau who is also there, who sometimes has sessions at the CAC. But our CAC doesn't necessarily provide counseling, but we have case managers who will kind of go in and get some crisis intervention, get referrals, find out the area. So for the New Orleans CAC, we do a lot of referrals to STAR for kids and for families. So we'll let parents know, like, hey, you can go to STAR, and they see kids who've had a history of sexual abuse, and also like mom, like you can also get services there too, being as though she would be considered a secondary survivor.
Yeah, that's a great point to make, that we are able to offer services. A lot of people don't realize that when they hear we're a sexual assault center. They think that these services are strictly for adults or maybe even older kids, but not necessarily, 3 years old, I think, is the youngest age that a counselor may see here at the agency. We're able to provide those same services as far as counseling, play therapy, and different types of methods to help a child deal with that trauma. So working and going through this process, is it particularly scary for a child, for a parent? How do you help combat those fears?
Definitely for a parent, it is very scary, because you're coming in. Now, it's very, very rare that a parent comes in and they're not sure why their kid is there. So it is very scary, and we oftentimes have parents who become really emotional being in there, and they don't know what's going to happen next. They just know that their child's coming here because like something happened. For kids, oftentimes the CAC, it's a yellow house. It's really homey. It's our house is yellow, and there's toys, and everyone's really friendly. So
they're
it's certainly
kid-friendly centers.
Right. So it definitely doesn't look like a scary place for kids. And we have a playground. And so kids always say how they want to come back. And we're like, we don't want to see you back here. But, so for kids, I think a lot of times it can be really scary, maybe because like they don't know why they're there or what's going on. So even going into the interview, the interviewer may just kind of build rapport with the kid. And we have Play-Doh that sometimes kids will play with, or we let them draw. So just to make them get comfortable with the interviewer, to make it less scary, because some kids just don't want to leave their parents.
That's understandable though, that's comfort.
Right.
And you talk about scary, and I asked about scary. Are police involved? Is that necessarily a possible hindrance for parents to come to the center, or for a kid to be in the center? How involved is law enforcement?
So law enforcement is very involved, because interviews at the CAC are not done unless they are set up by law enforcement or set up by DCFS. Okay. So a lot of times the kid has already met the detective, and sometimes the detectives show up to monitor the interviews, or they send an investigator to monitor the interviews. But a lot of times when it is the detective, there's a really positive relationship between the detective and the family, and even the kids. Kids are like, hey, I saw you. And so they're like really excited, to see the detective. We have a really great child abuse unit. So I think that has really made parents comfortable and kids comfortable too.
Good. And I noticed you mentioned monitoring. So what do you mean by monitoring the interview?
So the interviews are all videotaped. We record the interviews because we hope to limit the amount of times that kids and teens have to come in there and repeat themselves about whatever it is that they go in there and talk about. So we do have a consent form that parent or guardian, whoever brought the kid in, would sign consenting to the video, and someone from law enforcement or DCFS monitors from the other side. So there's a camera in the room. The child is things are very transparent with the child. Hey, our camera's set up right there, where the detective's on the other side watching us. Oftentimes kids will wave at the camera. And, you know, I have these little earpiece. I may check in, or I might step out and talk with the detective. I'm going to write things down while you're talking. So it is very open, so that, you know, kids aren't taken by surprise or like, what is going on? So we try to be as transparent as possible without, you know, mentioning anything about why they're there.
Do you see any benefit for a parent allowing their child to go through this process? If you had to talk to a parent that was scared or wasn't sure if they should bring their child in after DCFS or the police recommended, what would you tell them?
It's better to just be safe than sorry, because sometimes we have kids who come in and through kind of the interview, it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe nothing did happen. Or sometimes we have kids who will come in about one thing and then they start talking and they disclose something that was totally caught everyone off guard.
Wow.
So I definitely always say, you know, it's better to just, if they come in and it's nothing, it's nothing. But if they come in and it's something, at least it was caught, you know?
Wow. So there are kids where you may be working on one particular case and something else happens out of that case, like a completely different one.
Oh yeah, and we do screening. So oftentimes, you know, kids may come in about one thing. We may exhaust all the information about that one thing and then say, you know, has someone else ever hit you? And so, yes, no, or we may say, has someone else ever touched you? And more, quite often do kids say, well, yeah, this other person did.
Oh, wow.
And in cases like that, we're usually like, oh, well, did you come to a place like this to talk with someone? And if they say yes, then we don't go into it. If they say no, it is something that we start exploring and getting more information on.
Are there any tips that you can give parents to look for? You know, it's so easy to go through your day-to-day life and you kind of miss out on subtle hints or clues that something is happening with your child. So are there any tips as a forensic interviewer, as an advocate, that you could possibly give a parent to look for in their child?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as a parent, we always know our kids best. And so it's just about paying attention and really listening, because, you know, kids will sometimes pick and choose when they want to say stuff. We have instances where kids are getting, especially little kids, are getting baths by parents, and then all of a sudden they disclose. Or parents are just kind of sitting and kids will walk up and say, you know, this thing happened to me. And so just really being that ear to listen and to pay attention when kids don't want to go by a certain someone. Now, that's not saying that anything's happened, but, you know, it could be an indicator that something has happened if they all of a sudden, you know, don't want to go by grandpa's house anymore, or they don't want to see that aunt anymore. And it's like, okay, like, you know, what's going on? And to just always be mindful of those reactions and responses. Because sometimes kids, you know, they see mom may react, you know, absolutely horrified and, you know, they don't want to disclose anymore. So they're like, all right, they shut down. So, and it can be really hard, but just trying to remember that, like, you know, they disclosed for a reason.
Yes, absolutely. And if they are comfortable to share this, your only goal, whether you are a caregiver or, you know, a parent or cousin, whoever they disclose to, you don't have to investigate, like we said. You just have to believe that child and that something has happened. And I like that you mentioned, you know, be aware of little cues like them not wanting to go by someone's house anymore, or just feeling uncomfortable by a person. Because we know that grooming is a big part of this, and that grooming plays a huge role in essentially a perpetrator or the abuser preparing them for the abuse. Can you explain a little bit more about grooming and what that may look like or what that means?
Yeah, so grooming is just that process of basically making a child comfortable with all these little things that when it comes to kind of like the grand finale of a perpetrator's end goal, the child doesn't feel so much like it's wrong. So whether that's like sending inappropriate text messages, or starting with like holding hands and then, you know, putting a child on your lap, or making really inappropriate comments, those are just like really, for a child could be really small things that maybe they don't think any big deal, especially if it continues and goes on. And grooming is sometimes not a one day and then the next day this thing happens. Sometimes grooming is years and years, you know, and sometimes grooming starts when kids are really little, and then all of a sudden something even more intense happens as they get older.
Any other tips or last minute thoughts? I think we've covered a lot so far. Maybe there could be a part 2, but any last minute tips or things to leave parents as we come to the end of this episode?
Well, and also, you know, being at STAR, we know that even for adults, that perpetrators are often someone that we know, and it's not the stranger hiding in the bushes with the mask on. And even more so for kids, it's generally always someone that they know. And a lot of times, you know, parents will say, I never thought that it would be this person. But just paying attention to that, and you know, it's not always just like, it's not always a stranger. It's usually someone that the kid knows.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gabby. I appreciate you ending on that note, because I think it is important to recognize, just because it's someone you know, a family member, a close friend, that it is not okay, that, you know, they should not be doing this. And if you are standing up and you're reporting an instance of abuse, just think of how many other people you could be assisting or preventing from further perpetration by calling this person out and making sure that the authorities know about them. Again, STAR, we work closely with CACs in all of the parishes that we're in, because it's important for a child to have that safe space for an interview. And then we are able to provide that counseling service, or group therapy for some cases, or play therapy, I'm sorry, not group therapy, in some cases. And if you do need assistance, you can always reach out to STAR. We have a 24-hour hotline. It is 1-855-435-STAR. You can call at any point in time. It's managed by our advocates, which Gabby is also an advocate. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate this conversation and this overview of a CAC. If you guys out there have any more videos you would like to see, or any other topics you would like to have us discuss, please let us know, comment below, and we will see y'all next time.